Miami Condo Mondays is a live podcast on the first workday of the week at 4 p.m. South Florida time. The program features former journalist and current Wall Street consultant Peter Zaleski of the Miami Condo Investing Club and former lender and veteran condo broker Jenny Huertas of CBRealty.com. Recorded weekly in greater downtown Miami, this one-hour discussion will provide a refreshing and sometimes controversial perspective on the state of the South Florida condo market from a pair of seasoned real estate professionals who do not always agree. The program won't tell you what to think about the South Florida condo market, but will give you something to think about before buying, selling, taking listings, or financing units. This podcast is not authorized by the Miami real estate industry and will quite possibly annoy many of its figureheads. Welcome to this week's episode of Miami Condo Mondays, broadcast live on the social media accounts of Peter Zaleski and Jenny Huertas. Happy Monday. This is Peter Zaleski. I'm a condo consultant. I'm also the founder of the Miami Condo Investing Club. Check out our website, miamicondo.club. If you're watching this podcast, that means it is a Monday. There's no better way to start the week than to talk condos, talk South Florida condos, talk about what's going on. What are the latest trends? Who do I have here to talk condos with me? My partner, Jenny Huertas. She is the broker owner of a firm called CVR Realty. You can find her at cvrrealty.com. What's going on, Jenny?
Hey, Peter. Happy Monday. How are
Happy
you?
Monday. I'm doing well, but it's a Monday. It's pissing down rain in Miami. It pissed down rain over the weekend, and just to top it all off, we had technical problems today trying to get the podcast going. But that being said, we kind of soldiered on, and we're here and we're live. We are on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook, YouTube, and Substack.
Okay, awesome.
So every week we get together, and the thought process is, when people are stuck in traffic, maybe they're sick of listening to their boss, and they want to kind of zone out for the last hour of the traditional workday. They can tune in and watch our podcast and or listen to our podcast, which, by the way, I make it available later on, probably about a couple hours after the podcast. It's made available to everybody. But what we do is we talk condos. You are a veteran in the real estate industry. I'm a veteran in the real estate industry. You've been down here since the 90s, as have I. You were a financier before this, and you've been a broker and involved with real estate for 20 years or so. I was a journalist writing about the condo market for 13 years or so, and broke off with Condo Vultures. So we had a run with Condo Vultures, and here we are now. Fast forward to today, 2025. Jenny, I got to tell you, I'm seeing a lot of the same stuff I saw prior to the Great Recession. I don't know if I'm Chicken Little, if I'm a bear, but it's starting to look a lot like 2007 to me.
Yes, I guess our market is super cyclical. We missed a cycle in the last time around, and circumstances are different, but same story.
Same story exactly. Well, what is the story we're going to be talking about today? The story we're going to be talking about today is the Central Business District. Central Business District is an area in greater downtown Miami. It's an area that's defined as the Miami River north to the MacArthur Causeway, which, by the way, I've been using increasingly. General Douglas MacArthur, that's the gentleman who led the U.S. initiative for World War II. Everybody just refers to it as the MacArthur. I'm bringing back the name General Douglas MacArthur because you always hear about the Julia Tuttle Causeway, and then to the south you have the Eddie Rickenbacker Causeway. So basically the Central Business District, or downtown, however you want to refer to it, CBD, it's going to go from the river north about 16 blocks. It'll end up at the General Douglas MacArthur Causeway. The eastern boundary is going to be Biscayne Bay. The western boundary will be I-95. So it's kind of an area that for the longest time, Jenny, it was overlooked by many people. And if you want a landmark to sort of figure out, what are we kind of talking about? Think Bayside, think Kaseya Center, which for the longest time was called the American Airlines Arena. And then it had a short run as the FTX Arena until the founder of FTX got convicted and sent to federal prison. It's now called the Kaseya Center. And then just to the northern side, you're going to have ultimately the Museum Park, where you have the Art Museum, you have the Frost Science Museum. And then on the west side, We have Overtown. We also have the courthouse, Dade County Courthouse. Many of you have probably seen it. It's that older courthouse built, I think, in the 1920s or so. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking about just this little window. Some of you, if you're partiers, you might recognize this area because that is where Club 11 is. As well as Club Space. So, longest time there was nothing to do at night in and around that area. Fast forward to today, Jenny, believe it or not, I ran the numbers. The Central Business District ran the numbers. We got 12 new condo projects going up in this little stretch, 16 blocks from south to north, representing some of the vicinity of 4,800 units. And these 4,800 new units, what is that going to mean for the total supply down there? Well, it's taken it from about 9,300 to suddenly more than 14,000 units. So we are
Uh,
adding 50% of the condo supply to the Central Business District right now today. And I can tell you in walking this area, and we did a tour on Saturdays, we do tours, we do walking tours. We call Miami Condo Construction, excuse me, Miami Condo Correction walking tours. It's a 3 hour tour. We wander about 4 miles. I give everybody a handout, a list of every single condo building that exists within a certain area that we're walking. And I teach people how to analyze buildings because, Jenny, we're both in the agreement that you find a building, and then once you find a building, making sure that the financials are right, the building is safe, it's got a structural integrity reserve study or its milestone inspection report, which is now required after the Surfside condo collapse tragedy where nearly 100 people died and $1 billion was paid out. So our approach is you find a building and then you focus on the unit. So on this tour, that's what we were doing. So we were forced to kind of pull the numbers, and some of the numbers are shocking. This is a severe buyer's market, and there's a shit ton, and that's a technical term, of new product coming online because of the 4,800 units that are in the process. So, Jenny, help us make sense of it. What's going on in that market? Is it simply because for the longest time it was overlooked? Nobody built anything around there. You had the old original Miami Arena where the Miami Heat played, and the two-time champion Florida Panthers played, and then suddenly it went quiet. It was a ghost town, and now
yeah.
it is the center of new development.
Yes, it's I think one of the factors that brought a lot of interest in the area was the Bright Line Central Station and Miami World Center that's supposed to be ready in 2020. I remember when we saw on the all the rendering. So the one will be in Miami 2021, and the
No,
the
no, no, no,
project.
no. I no, 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 no. Hold on, I got to stop you. 2005 is when they first announced the Miami World Center.
Right.
2005. Yes, you heard me correct. And what it was going to be is it was going to be a pedestrian mall. There were going to
Yes.
be shops, and then there were going to be some condos around. It was going to be all kind of mixed use. Lo and behold, we hit with the Great Recession. The two developers who were running it, a gentleman out of Boca Raton,
Mhm.
another one out of Fort Lauderdale slash Miami, and they lost dirt. They weren't able to
Right.
maintain it all. Some of it went by the wayside. They've now revived it. They brought in some capital. They brought in some investors who've taken down sites. So what was
Yeah.
originally going to be this whole complex is now, in my opinion, a ton of new towers. They all look the
Yeah.
same. They all feel the same. They all have a starting price of about $1,200 a square foot. And as for retail, yeah, they tuck a little bit in here, a little bit in there, but it's nothing like it was originally announced back in 2005.
Right.
And the reason I remember 2005 is they came out with a video, and we might actually be able to find it on YouTube, where they used the
Yes.
music from, what was it, Jenny? The Miami Vice, the opening scene. They were running that music for this video, and then the whole thing went to shit. And now they're bringing it back and making it seem like it's something special. But this is 20 years in the making.
Yes. Yes. The project was different, but the project supposed to be ready by 2021.
Okay,
Uh,
the
that
the the,
was
the latest generation of it.
Yeah, the latest generation of it, and of course now it's 2025. Yes, it is being developed, but I think the Bright Line Central Station brought a lot of attention to to that area, along with the Miami Port Center. It is very well located. It is right there by 95. I do live there. I I know very well. You have the options to use transportation. Now it's gonna be the problem is that we do have the a good transportation for people that live there right now. But with all these many units coming in play at the same time, how is gonna be the metro mover? Probably it's not gonna be enough,
Okay,
or
okay,
the
so
metro.
Yeah, and that's a great point. But let's kind of lay it out because maybe we're gonna have people watching this all over the world. They're gonna be like, I don't really get it. So let me kind of break it down. So
Okay.
you got this. So for the longest time, downtown Miami was a ghost town. It was basically filmed with homeless people. It was filmed with prostitutes. It was filled with drug
Yeah.
addicts. There was all kinds of problems going back to the 90s when Jenny and I both got down here. So fast forward 2000, they come out with the census. U.S. Census comes out and says Miami is the poorest big city in the country, in the United States. As a result of that, the government administration, they saw an opportunity to go ahead and try to put in place some programs that would bring new development. Why do they want new development? A, they wanted, they wanted more people in there. They could have retail. They
Yeah.
could do a variety of things. The other thing is we don't have state income tax. In many of the governments, whether it's the city, the county, or the school board, it's all funded with property taxes. Property taxes
Yeah.
are 2% of the value. Now, if you're a Florida resident, you have a way to something called a homestead where you can kind of lock stuff in. But basically, if you're a local, you get a subsidized deal on the taxes. If you're not a local, you're basically paying for everybody else to go ahead and do everything they're going to sort of do. So this plan's put in place by a mayor called Manny Diaz. The plan's called Miami 21. It ultimately gets passed, I don't know, 2007, 2008, something like that. Opens the floodgates for high density, including up to 1,000 units per acre if you're in and around a certain area and you're close to public transportation, which is what Jenny's talking about. So our forms of public transportation down here are one of many. Let's take Uber off the track. Let's take the cars off the track. Basically, what your options are if you don't have a car, which I haven't had a car since 2013. It was voluntary. It was not court ordered. I decided to give up the car because I thought it was a pain in the ass. I mean, you got to pay for parking. You got to get parking tickets. You got gas. You got maintenance. Who wants to waste an hour getting their oil changed? So basically, I gave it up. And there's been different opportunities that come up along. So what are your options if you don't have a car? Well, one, the city runs a free trolley service. You can jump on the trolley, you jump on, you jump off. It's not a trolley with like lines, electric lines, or anything, any kind of grooves in the street. It's basically a bus that looks like an old school trolley like you'd find in San Francisco. So that's one option. Another option is something called a Metro Mover. Metro Mover is basically a bus that they put up in the sky and it runs on tracks. It's automated. It is I guess it was foretelling for what we were going to have, what Waymo and what Tesla's trying to do in self-driving
Yeah.
vehicles. But basically, it's a bus that's up on tracks and it runs around, relatively limited in terms of where it can get. And then from there, we have a subway, which is called the Metrorail. And then and the Metrorail basically just runs in the city. It takes you close to a lot of stuff, but not to anything. And then on top of that, we got a tri-county system called the Tri-Rail, which will take you to Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County. The problem for the longest time was located out west, away from the urban areas. So you got the Tri-Rail, and then we have private sector that's come in, and it's called Brightline. Brightline's come in and they offer a luxury experience where you can go from Miami, you can go to Aventura, you then go to Fort Lauderdale. I think there's a stop off in Boca Raton. Yes, there is a stop off in Boca
Yes.
Raton, and in West Palm Beach. And now they've continued it on to the Orlando area. And the advantage of Brightline is it's all east of Interstate 95. So it basically runs parallel to the Bay or the
Hmm.
Intercoastal on the east, and then Interstate 95 on the west. And you can basically get off and be right in the heart of whatever city you want to be in. This is actually the same type of line. It's not the same tracks, but the same line that Henry Flagler, the gentleman who brought the train down to Miami and led to Miami being incorporated in 1896, and it ultimately took
Uh-huh.
it down to Key West for a hurricane, kind of wiped it all out. So what Jenny's talking about is there is public transportation. There are options. Again, trolley, Metro Mover, which is bus on tracks, Metro Rail, which is our subway. Then you got the Tri-Rail, which is public that can take you to all three counties, Miami-Dade, Broward, Palm Beach County to the north, and now private sector, which is called Brightline. And the Brightline station, which they call, Jenny, what do they call it? Miami Central?
Central. Miami
Yeah,
Central. Yes.
they call it Central. So that's right there in this Central Business District. It's
Hmm.
off of 8th and effectively Overtown, which was historically the African American community, especially during segregation and during times when any kind of performers or workers on Miami Beach, they were required to leave at sunset. And party goers who were partying on the beach and they wanted to do something at night, and the entertainment was much maybe more interesting in the Overtown area, they would kind of head over there. So now it's all
Uh-huh.
kind of getting combined into one. But basically the hole in the donut to the south would be the Brickell Avenue area. To the north will be the Biscayne Boulevard corridor where you have Edgewater, you have Wynwood, Greenwood, you have Midtown. So right there in the center, which is no go for the longest time because of hookers, drug dealers, or drug addicts, homeless, all that type of stuff. Now it's all getting cleaned up. And Jenny, there's an Apple store.
Yes. Yes, it is. It is an Apple Store, Starbucks, restaurants, and the Museum of Ice Cream.
Museum of Ice
And
Cream. Yep.
the Museum of Ice Cream, like $50 to get in there to have ice cream.
Wow.
And bowling alley. It's a different, it's just happening. It was nothing there. I lived there for 10 years, and let's say that the last 2 years I've seen a lot of changes.
Yep. Yep.
But
Yep.
still, I experience the construction. I still look at it all the time. I'm like, oh my God, how is gonna be when all these towers are gonna be delivered? And a lot of them are for Airbnb. Lots of them are for short-term rentals. That was the model of the business that happened after the regular condos came on the first line that was Biscayne Boulevard. Everything that happened on the last row, except for a couple of them, that is Waldorf and an Elser, they are still in Biscayne Boulevard, but the rest of them are behind. Therefore, they don't have direct water views.
This is a
But
and this is a good point. Just to give you context, from the condo law was created in Florida in 1963. So from 1963 until about 2001, in all of Greater Downtown Miami, Brickell, Edgewater, Central Business District, you had 11,500 condos. 2002 to 2010, basically from the beginning to ultimately the Great Recession, they put up 22,000 additional units, taking us to 33,000. Where do we stand today, Jenny, since 2010? 59,000 units are now in Greater Downtown Miami, basically since 2010. So what
yeah,
we did is we effectively added somewhere in the ballpark of 26,000 units in the last, I don't know, 15 years or so.
yeah, that is for the whole
All of Greater Downtown Miami, correct?
okay, okay.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
is
But
a
in the
lot of
central business,
units.
but the central business district, they're adding 4,800 units. And oh, Jenny, by the way, this doesn't include rental towers. And I will tell you that the preponderance of the majority of projects going up in this central business district, they're going to be rentals. They're not necessarily condo towers. Condo towers are kind of, I don't know what the ratio would be. We're in the process of doing that right now. It's a little bit more complicated to pull the numbers, but
Yeah.
I'd say it's at least 1 to 1. It's probably 1.5 to 1 in terms of rental versus condo. And keep in mind, every single unit, we typically ballpark it at 1.5 people per unit. We also say zero point 0.5 dogs, and if you notice, there's not a lot of park space. So when you go on the street in this area, it would behoove you to walk in the street to make sure you don't step in anything that you're going to remember and smell for quite some time.
Correction,
All
correction.
right.
We have a really, really beautiful big park right
Yeah, but the problem is to get to that park. So when they were building before the Great Recession, they built right on Biscayne Boulevard because they needed a way to sell people, and they sold them on a view of the water.
there.
You could see Port of Miami, you could see you could see Key Biscayne. You see
Yeah,
Dodge Island, which is the port. You would see Fisher Island, you see Miami Beach, you see all the little islands off the Venetian Causeway. Now what they're building is they're going west. They're going towards Overtown. They're
yeah,
going towards Interstate 95. And in order to get from there to the actual park where you can have your dog run free and do what it wants to do, there's not a lot of people going to do it, especially in the summer, like a day like today
right.
when it's pissing down rain, it's 95 degrees. So that's why I say, I mean, it might look good on a map, but when you're actually walking it, I don't know how well it plays out.
I agreed. I agreed. Yeah, only that's only for the use of the people that live across the street from the park, I guess. Yes, but there is an option, and yes, there is people that do not want to walk the dog more than 1 block, especially in the summer. So yes, it's gonna be interesting to see how it's gonna develop. However, the I-395, the project
Which
of the
is
new bridge,
which is the MacArthur
the
Causeway,
MacArthur, that is supposed to have parks below it. We'll see. Some green areas. I mean, it's a beautiful project. I really wish everything works perfect for the area because it's mine. But But when you see the number of units and the prices that we are seeing, it's when I'm gonna say what's gonna happen.
Oh,
Hey, it's
don't give
gonna
up. Don't give up the prices yet because this is an hour podcast and I have it all. So we are going to get into that. You know what else we're going to get into,
okay.
Jenny? We're going to tell you which buildings are basically selling off, where all the owners want to get out, or a big proportion of them. We're also going to tell you which buildings are solid. Nobody wants to sell, so make sure you stick around for the entire podcast. It's going to go about an hour. We're about 20 minutes into it. We want to set the scene, though. We want to kind of give you an idea of what to expect. And give you an idea of what to expect, Jenny, let's go
Okay.
back to the 90s when we got here. You know, I made a comment about prostitutes and druggies and homeless and all that type of stuff. So let's go back to the 90s. Back in the 90s, you had this arena go up, this Miami arena where the Miami Heat played, as well as the Florida Panthers hockey team. They played there. There was a station built, a subway station, a Metro Rail station right there. It's called Overtown Station. So you'd get off the subway or the Metro Rail, you cross the street, you go up all these stairs, and you'd ultimately end up in this arena. It was a small little arena. It stood about maybe 12, 15 years. It got torn
Yeah.
down and ultimately was replaced by the American Airlines Arena, which then got the name was changed to FTX Arena in honor of the guy who's in prison right now for the variety of different issues, and now it's called the Casella Center. So what was happening in the 90s, Jenny? If you were on Biscayne Boulevard where all these high rises were, I'll never forget it. When I first got to Miami, driving down Biscayne Boulevard, which is supposed to be the main promenade, you had a park on one side, you had Bayside on the other, you had the Hotel Intercontinental. Well, if you were looking as you drove north, and you would look at the parks on the east side fronting the bay, these were basically no-go zones because they were all dominated by homeless people. You simply
Right.
couldn't go in there. There was crime. There was a variety of other things. Now, on the other side of Biscayne Boulevard, in and around where many of these new condos are going up, this Miami World Center, which is the name given by the developer, you had homeless shelters. You had the Camille's House. You had other things going on. So typically, in and around that central business district, it was real sort of sketchy, especially if you were new to town. There was a
Right.
Greyhound bus station and a gas station where now the Project 1000 museum currently
Hmm.
stands. So just being around there, you were going to get shaken down for change, or maybe
Yeah.
people, a cigarette. People were going to get very aggressive. So, it was really was a challenge. And I would argue that's one of the reasons the Miami Downtown Development Authority, a taxing district and a body that's supposed to promote development, that's what they were brought in because nobody wanted to be around there. And if you were in any of these buildings, you had to worry that your car was going to get broken into if you were at work. And more importantly, air conditioning, the compressors, the ones that they put up on the roof of one-story and two-story buildings, they had to put wrought iron security around it so nobody at night would come in there and steal the air conditioner and kind of piss off because they wanted to turn it in for scrap metal. Am I getting anything wrong, or would you agree?
No, I agree, but I can't believe that you remember details like the air conditionings being changed not to be or
Well, yeah,
protected not to be stolen.
but it was shocking because it's like, who the hell is going to go on top of a one or two story commercial building and steal the air conditioners? But they had issues. This is what now
I
remember.
guess.
We were coming out of the cocaine. We were coming out of the
Yeah.
rough 1980s go cocaine.
Right.
We were dealing with everything that happened as a result of Marielle when we had this large number of people from Cuba who came over here.
Mhm.
But so you had a bunch of stuff changing. Then in the 90s, you had the wrap up of the cocaine cowboy era. Drugs
Yeah.
were plentiful.
True.
They were killing tourists. Back in the day, on your license plate, your tag, there'd be something. Right now, it says "In God We Trust" or it says the county. Back then, it used to say rental. And as a result of that, some of the people, because the economy was what the economy was, they were going ahead and tracking and following these rent-a-cars, and then they would rob the people. And in many cases, they ended up killing a number of
Yeah.
tourists, especially those from Germany. So it was a no-go zone for the most part in the 90s down here, and it was all just because of all the transition that was going on. So to fast forward and see what we got today in and around the central business district is really sort of shocking. But I almost wonder, are they taking it too far with all of the new development? I mean, going block by block by block. I was walking it on Saturday with our tour, and let me tell you, the traffic. I probably could have lapped people who were in the car trying to go effectively, this 16 block stretch. It does not move. And this is a
Yeah.
Saturday. There's no Miami Heat game. There's no concert. There's no event going on. And, I was definitely out walking the cars.
No, definitely. It's a walking area. It's supposed to be. I mean, it's becoming more and more pedestrian, that's for sure. there is a lot of development simultaneously. Absolutely. So I'm so curious to see what your numbers say. I know you don't want me to give them up, but you already put a context on the area. I mean, it's an area of development because Bricol Avenue is overdeveloped. This Don Finito is 20 years, and downtown still have land that was really good lots, and now is very few available. Everybody is building there. So a lot of rental towers because they get a better deal with taxes. They also get better deal with insurance and loans. So that's why you have almost 1-to-1 uh, rentals and versus condominiums. And the condominiums are becoming delivered in the next this year and in the next 2 or 3 years are gonna be all super luxury. I mean, we don't build anymore for the masses like it was in 2003 to 2007. It was for everybody. Now these condos are not for everybody. Not everybody can afford 1,200 per square foot condo.
It's a great point. It's a very good point. Let me give you some context, Jenny, because you were talking about that. So in this greater downtown Miami area, as mentioned, there's about 204 condo projects. It's not the number of buildings; it's number of projects. So some buildings are
Mm.
projects, much like the Icon Brickell, which has 3 towers. It's going to represent whatever. But there's 204 projects
Yeah.
today, just under 59,000 units. And Brickell Avenue area, which you referenced, it's got about 101 projects, some in the vicinity of about 29,500 units. It represents roughly 50% of all units are going to be in that Brickell Avenue area, which will stretch from the
Yeah.
Miami River south to the Reckenbacher Causeway. Again, it'll be 95 on the as a western boundary and Biscayne Bay as the eastern boundary. And by the way, we are going to be doing a tour of the Brickell Avenue area if anybody's interested. We're going to be doing that in 2 weeks, so that I think will be about the 26th or so of July. So we got Brickell Avenue at 50% of the market. Then we're going to have the Edgewater area, which we call Biscayne Boulevard Corridor. It'll be that area from the MacArthur Causeway north to the Julia Tunnel, and again, Bay west to Interstate 95. Now, in this Biscayne Boulevard area, you got Edgewater to the east, you got Midtown to the north center, and then you're going to have Wynwood to the west. And that area is going to represent about 26% of the market, or about 15,400 units. And suddenly, Central Business District, this area we're talking about today, it's come out of nowhere and now represents 24% of the market. 14,000 units, 34 projects, excluding rentals. And why do I mention that? Because the rental game is critical because anybody coming in to buy, if they're not going to stay here full time, chances are they're going to try to rent it. Well, if you try to rent in the Central Business District, you are going up against a bunch of real estate investment trusts or REITs who can basically undercut you the same way Walmart can undercut an individual
Yeah.
retailer. So this is sort of the issue going on. But Jenny, who would have thought 24% of overall greater downtown Miami market would be located in the Central Business District? We've been doing tours, Jenny, since 2013 or so when you came up with the brilliant idea and we rented a bus and
Mhm.
we went out and it's been going on and on and on. And by the way, we will be bringing bus tours back in the winter. Right now we're doing walking tours, but get some steps in, get some sun, feel the air and all that type of stuff. But who would have thought, back then when we did our tours, Jenny, we would spend no time in the Central Business District. We would simply buzz
Right.
past everything on Biscayne Boulevard, and then we end up on Brickell, or we'd fast forward, we get up to the Edgewater area, Midtown. Now suddenly, all of the activity, it's going on in the Central Business District, which is kind of shocking. Would you have thought 1 out of every 4 condos in Greater Downtown Miami is going to be located in this little 16-block stretch between the river and the MacArthur?
Yeah, well, it's surprising, but it's logical because of the other areas being developed
Yep.
and because of I think because of the location. The location is super attractive. If you want to get out of there to take I-95 north or south, and now with the I-395, and yes, it's gonna be hard to get from your building to the I-95, but it's much easier than doing it for Brickell or Edgewater. Like if you're in Edgewater, you have to go. toward downtown or on the way to 36th Street to take I-95, or you're in the center. I think the location is what is getting finally, because we thought it was going to be developed in phases, but it's all of the sudden everybody start building simultaneously. So now it's going to be the delivery. It's going to be simultaneous as well, because most of the buildings, they're supposed to be in phases. They're supposed to be delivered in 2023, 2024, but most of these buildings have at least 1 year delay on the delivery, 1 or 2 years delay. So now you're going to have more condos being closing simultaneously.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. And to your point, Jenny, about the traffic. So the Miami River, which basically separates the Brickell Avenue area to the south and Central Business District to the north.
Mhm.
So that river, it's a working river. There is, there's people with sailboats and stuff like that, but you got cargo going out to parts of the Caribbean as well as parts of Central America where they don't have deep
Yeah,
water ports, and therefore these littler ships. Because remember, the draft in the Miami River, the depth is only about 15 feet or so. So these aren't the huge ocean liners that are going from China to
yeah,
Los Angeles. These are the smaller ones that can kind of fit into small ports in the Caribbean as well as parts of Central America. So that's a working river, and as a result, Jenny, all of the bridges have to go up in order to get the ships, allow them to get out. Now, the city and the county and the state and the Coast Guard, they put in place certain restrictions when these ships can leave. But when a ship goes through, everybody's on lockdown for 10, 15 minutes. I mean, think about a train. This is worse than a train because it
um,
just takes so long. And as soon as that happens, if you're on Brickell or if you're like a south side of the southern portion of Central Business District, you're not going anywhere. But like you said, if in fact the bridge is up because of Central Business District, it gives you the ability to get out in a bunch of different ways
yeah.
that you don't find in Brickell and you also don't find in the Biscayne Boulevard corridor area, simply because the infrastructure is mediocre and possibly even piss poor, in some people's opinions.
Yeah, exactly. So the development doesn't surprise me. It is, but the numbers are shocking, because when you see the towers happening, and you see a lot of rental towers and business, like offices or some of them, a combination or mixed use, you
Yep.
don't know the impact until you see the stats and you see, oh my God, really? It's 24% of the
Yep.
overall market? That's a lot.
Now,
But I
now,
think
now,
it's, go ahead.
well, I was going to say, and keep in mind, one of the real drivers coming out of the Great Recession for the Central Business District area, this Miami World Center area. Again, it's a name chosen by the developers. That's why they call it the World Center. So one of the big driving forces back then, and also was a driving force with a Malaysian company called Genting. Genting
Yeah.
owns Norwegian Cruise Lines. They also own gambling hubs all around the world, including as close as Bimini. They're out in Vegas. It's a Malaysian-based
Mhm.
company. So one of the things back then during the Great Recession is how do we get the economy going? How do we get people here? Nobody had any cash to burn. That was the argument. So they tried to push through gambling. One of the gambling sites would have been located right here in this central business district. The other one would have been on the Genting site, which is just outside, just on the north side of the MacArthur Causeway. So fast forward today, we still don't have this legalized gambling. Many doubt that it will ever come.
Yeah.
But my point is, if in fact the development of this Genting site ever goes forward, it's the former Herald site. If it goes forward, you're only going to add thousands and thousands and thousands of more additional units to go along with everything else that's been put up in and around there. So, driving a car, I'm not even sure you'd want to, simply because it's probably quicker to walk than anything else. So it almost makes you wonder, Jenny, like they do in certain places, including New York City, Singapore, other places like that. When you come into the central business district, you almost got to wonder if they don't need to put in place a tariff just to try to
Yes.
restrict. And I know
Hmm.
tariffs are very popular right now, but I'm just saying just try to limit who's coming in because the traffic
Yeah.
is really so piss poor and so horrible.
Yes, I believe we're gonna have to adapt to it. It's either restrictions to go to the center, like in many cities in Europe, that if you don't live there, you have to park outside and walk.
Yeah, like
And
London or whatever. Yep.
yeah, possibly we're gonna have more bike lines and people is gonna be using bikes. Who knows? But I almost forgot about Genting. I mean, like we talk about this project, we were doing the tours, and it's gonna be like the longest pool in the United States and all that, and nothing of that happened.
It was
Yeah,
a
I forgot about it.
six building complex that was basically
Yeah,
going to stretch from Biscayne Boulevard, go all the way to the bay. They were going to have the six towers on a pedestal, and they would have a big swimming pool in the middle, and it would have been the longest pool, what, in Florida or the Southeast or something like that. I mean, it was over the top, and obviously there would be a casino in there. Once the casino thing got killed,
yeah,
Genting was kind of like, okay, let's sort of give it a hold. They actually tried to sell the property. They had it under contract to David Martin from the Terra Group for north of $1 billion with a B, $1 billion. Ultimately, he couldn't get it over the finish line, backed out of the deal, according to press reports from publications such as The Real Deal, and the site is still sitting there. The only time they generate revenue now is when you got like Art Basel coming through every December. They rent out the dirt, and some guys put some tents up, and they charge people to come in and look at art. But other than that, there's nothing going on whatsoever in and around that area. But when they decide to build, just think about what that will add to the ultimate number of units that are in the market, which
yeah.
today, 59,000 condos. If I were going to ballpark the rentals, I'd probably put them somewhere in the vicinity of about 25,000. So I think we're very quickly approaching 100,000 units in this little 60 block stretch from the Rickenbacker Causeway all the way north to the Julia Tuttle, and then the bay to 95.